Have you ever wondered how HEDEX makes his hard-hitting jump up drum and bass tunes? Well, today I'm going to be showing you how he makes his tunes like click 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 and semi-automatic. HEDEX's success is clear to everyone, gaining millions of streams and thousands of shows. This is also to be said about his recent collaboration with Tiesto, one of the biggest EDM producers in the scene, and the announcement of his new documentary, which is just insane. I'm really excited to get into this one, there's no better time than now. Welcome back to How to DNB with Inverse Audio. My name's Denver and I've got a really heavy tune for you today. Drop a like if you've enjoyed and leave a comment with what you'd like to see next. We're always keen to see what you guys want. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. HEDEX likes to keep his drums very simple, sticking to the key principles of the syncopated drum and bass pattern. Considering HEDEX has been around for a long time in the scene, his drums share a lot of similar characteristics with old school jump up, meaning his snares are quite fat and slappy and his kicks are really thumpy. His use of heavy ride and hat loops are very effective, keeping the rhythm of the track flowing and creating lots of energy. If you're interested in the drum samples and the bass presets used in today's video, check out the Inverse Audio Drum and Bass Sample Pack Volume 3. This pack contains 900 unique samples and 400 presets to improve your sound selection. We designed this pack to cover every corner of drum and bass, with jump up bass one-shots to liquid reeces. There is currently a 25% discount, so head over to inverseaudio.co.uk to get your pack today. So, starting on the drums, we have a really simple pattern here. HEDEX likes to include tons of like really kind of distorted and rough clashes mixed with hi-hats. It sounds a little bit like this. There's a lot going on in it and it takes up a lot of space in the mix, but which is kind of the purpose of it, considering the sound design is quite minimal and it's just the sound design and then the sub. There's a lot of space for stuff to be going on elsewhere. So it's kind of filled with these kind of like rough ride loops. I have these basic hat pattern as well. Another little ride here. One hat and then another hat here. Kind of alternating, so it kind of like causes a bit of a bounce. We've got quite a long thumpy kick here and a distorted clappy snare. But yeah, altogether it sounds like this. I've also added this little short kick here again before this second kick in this pattern. Just to add something to the end of each 4 bars. Coming over to effects, on this one ride loop here, I've got some distortion to kind of bring out the grittiness I wanted from it and low cut. Nothing on the snare itself. On the kick, I've actually got a transient shaper bringing up the sustain, because if you see here, if I pull up this plugin, which kind of emulates a record box visualizer, I can pull up here and my kick, can you see how fat that is? If I turn off the transient shaper for the kick, it will look like this. There's actually not much of a difference, but I wanted to push all of this transients to the top of the ceiling. So I've just grabbed it and turned the sustain about 30% up, so it glues it to the top of that ceiling there. For the drum bus, all I have is a free clip. Because the drums are pretty wild, I wanted to clip them and give them kind of that old school drum and bass effect, if that makes sense. So I don't have any compression going on. They're all just being clipped at their ceiling. Just these little red sections here again being clipped. That clipping kind of glues it together without ruining the transients of the drums. In fact, it actually makes the sustain kind of longer when it's clipped because it's cutting off that attack. And that's exactly what I wanted. So the drums would fit the whole spectrum. I'll show you what I mean. On here again. It's almost like we're mixing into our master. Which is definitely one way to do it, and for this type of music I like to do it because as you can see, everything's kind of touching the ceiling or where it needs to be, which really helps when we're boosting the master at the end. Yeah, that's it for drums. Very simple again. I've gone quite an old school route for this one. Yeah, but let's move on. The biggest giveaway trait of HEDEX is his massive stab basses, both prior to and in the drop section. I've tried recreating this using an orchestral sample layered with a sine wave for depth. For the main grot bass, I've taken a few of HEDEX songs into consideration and created a bass using the iHas kick wavetable. HEDEX's sound design tends to be quite simple yet very effective, leaving crowds all over the world in complete awe. After the success of Click 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 with Tiesto and bass layers, I've decided to use this pattern, whilst also incorporating the sound of semi-automatic into it as well. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Yeah, just 3 different sounds here. First one being the classic HEDEX kind of orchestral hit thing. And this sample is actually from Splice, and what I've done to create the pattern is just pitched it down and up. So I've got like a dun 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 dun. They're all on the same channel as well, which is channel 11, in which I've added an OTT to kind of glue it all together. Taken some of the low mids out of there because I didn't want it to clash with the sub. Decapitator to kind of bring it out into the mix. Pro R to set it in its kind of place and have a bit of room on it. I've cut out some of the sub from the sides because it was really stereo, the sample was, and I didn't want it to be like that. And I've got a soothe on there as well, just to clean up the sound. That is also layered by a sub, which I'll get to in a second because it's the same sub as this part. But yeah, then we've got this bass, which is the classic kind of HEDEX grot bass. Which is a lot simpler than it sounds. I've got this sidechain here as well, just for the kick. I'll get to that in a sec. I'll open it up. I have got an iHas kick wavetable and a Who, I think it's Who, I don't know how you pronounce it, wavetable. This second wavetable is not very useful. If I mute it, you can see it doesn't actually sound that much different. All I'm using it for is the levels the whole way down. The FM from B is using that Who to kind of create a bit more like depth in the sound, if that makes sense. So I just have this iHas kick wavetable. This LFO is modulating this wavetable position and the level of it, as you can see when it goes, kind of like extends out, if that makes sense. Also modulating this white noise. And I have a peak 12 resonance filter on here at 86%. Without it, it sounds like this. They both sound cool, but as you can tell, they're kind of different sounds. This also kind of like, it just boosts a certain amount of harmonics in the frequency spectrum, which makes the sound slightly more melodic. Yeah, tube distortion, as always, on 89%. And this little filter here, Formant 1, which is really good to mess around with, because this will completely change the sound as well. If I turn it off, turn it on, that has completely changed the sound. I'll show you what I've got for this one, but you can mess around and find your a little different like things to make the sound different. A 99 hertz on the cutoff, resonance is 61%, drive's neutral, formant's 27%, and that's it. You can just play around with the formant, the resonant, and the cutoff to build sounds that you really like, but I was really happy with this one, so I just kept it kind of how it was. We come to effects. If I mute the effects quickly, still has a long way to go, as you can tell. A lot of these grot basses are like post effects, so if you sound design a sound, I would go the route of putting effects on at the same time as actually sound designing, because you'll never get it quite perfect if you're just trying to use Serum, if that makes sense, because you have plugins like Disperser and Formant Filter, which really bring out the kind of grottiness that you want. So yeah, first we have an OTT, doing the same thing as always, kind of bringing it out a bit. Disperser is a plugin that I absolutely love. It kind of just makes it a bit more fluid and adds some movement to it. Pro Q3, bringing down some of these frequencies here that are really harsh, so I just brought those down. Another low cut. The Formant Filter, this is another thing you can play around with and automate if you want. I chose this little spot down here. That's without anything. Again, so it basically just is almost just like a resonant filter, boosting that harmonic there. Another low cut. A thermal to bring it out even more and brighten up the sound. Pro R, but low mix. And a Pro C2, just compressing it slightly. But yeah, that's actually all for that sound. It's not too complex. because it is also just one serum patch, but it's the kind of post-processing that you have to really think about. As everyone uses different plugins for things as well, so if you guys are watching and like, oh, what even are these plugins? They're not complicated. They're just different variants of plugins that you might have. But yeah, and on the sine wave we have here, HEDEX likes to have really fat sine waves, or sub basses. So that's what I've tried to go for. As you can hear, that is distorted. Really distorted. I have sine shaper distortion on it, which I'll actually bring down a little bit. It's a bit extreme. And it's just a sine wave, and I've boosted these harmonics ever so slightly and removed the rest of them here. That's just that little pencil icon. That's if you want to add some tone to your sub, which can bring it out of the mix. And this type of thing, that's really important, because we need it to stand out. We almost want, bring up an example here. We almost want the sub to meet the grot bass, so we don't want any frequencies in between to be missing, if that makes sense. If we want a full song, and as you can see, we're going up to like 500 with that, and then this grot bass here goes down to about 200, so we have some overlapping frequencies, which isn't that bad because the sub bass like is a bit weak in 500 anyway. But yeah, as you can see, we're kind of fleshing out the whole frequency spectrum in terms of bass, which is what we need to have a kind of full song. On effects of the sub bass, yeah, just the EQ. But yeah, that's actually it for the bass. Again, quite simple. The pattern as well, what I've done is just have everything like this and in a really simple like 4/4 pattern, and I've basically just brought it off grid by quite a margin. But I'll show you the difference. This is what it sounds like with everything on grid. Sounds terrible. If I then bring it off grid and bring everything back in again, you see it sounds a lot more like conformed and just more boppy and more like has more movement to it, which is what I like to do in this type of thing. With Jump Up, it's all about having your basses off grid. That is the key. But yeah, let's move on to the intro. Let's go. HEDEX's build-up's the definition of suspense, mostly including both a snare/kick roll, repeating vocals, and a riser. We will try and incorporate all of these aspects into the song. We will also try and replicate the current length of Jump Up drum and bass intros, which tends to be either 16 or 32 bars. In this instance, I followed click click click, in which it drops after a really short 20 seconds. I've also taken a really minimal approach, using only one atmosphere and very few effects. Let's go. So, onto the intro. With HEDEX's new tune, Click Click Click, he has that vocal from Bass Layers, which is sick. I don't have Bass Layers next to me right now, so I had to settle for the next best thing. We have this vocal here. People in the back, 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 back. People in the back, 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 back. Put them people in the back, 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 back. People in the back, get them up. Yeah, and that then, in the end, also just repeats. And then it comes into this section here. There's no really serious effects. I've just got a Soothe 2 and this reverb, which is being automated here just before the drop. HEDEX keeps his intros really short and simple, like really short. I think Click 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 is like 25 seconds or something. So I've also got this little snare roll thing, which is the same snare that we've used. You can also do the same technique for a kick roll. But what I've done is I've automated this section of the EQ here. As you can see, it just comes out like that. To do that, you toggle this bit, so just move it with your mouse. Right clip up here. You can't see the screen, but then it should say create automation clips. When you do that, you'll be given this, and you just sweep it up. Can be really effective. I've also added this little jungle loop in here, just to add a bit more going on. A little riser, and some ambience.
just for a bit of texture. With the ambience, I've taken the highs and the lows out of it because I didn't want it to take too much presence up. The vocal is the kind of main thing. I have this section of the synth here, but it's completely under some automation of frequency. Yeah, here, I've just have this automated, so it's a lot quieter, as you can see, and I've taken out a lot of the lows and a lot of the highs. And that obviously comes off just before the drop. And yeah, one last thing is with HEDEX's stuff, it's incredibly loud. Like, everything is being driven extremely hard, which is something that you guys also should try and achieve if you're making music similar to this. And all jump up together, to be honest. It has to be kind of, it doesn't have to, but like, it's best to be sitting around like -4 LUFS if you possibly can, which means everything has to be loud on the mixer or just mixed really well and then boosted. But I've gone for the first option. As you can see here, with my sub bass here, pushing like -3. This rock bass is pushing pretty much 0. Which is quite extreme, but I think for this song, it works fine. I have a Pro Q3 on the master with a mid-side EQ, just cutting around 50. Just because you want to swoop to make sure there's no sub in the stereo. A free clip, or just any clipper, whatever it can be. And I'm literally just taking the very top off. Again, kind of making the song slightly more sausaged, if that makes sense. All of that is being clipped, the little red bits at the bottom, as you can see. The song is incredibly loud. I'll reset that. I've also got a limiter on after. Yeah, I've got it sitting around -4.4-ish. With this limiter, I haven't changed any of the settings. I've just brought the gain up. I wouldn't be pushing over -8 decibels unless you actually can. But make sure you're listening whilst you do it and see if it's distorting. If it is, then tame it back. In this instance, I've only brought it up by like 7 decibels. But as you can see, we're pushing quite a lot of gain out of that to reach -4.5. But this free clip's good because it gives us a lot of headspace to do so. So I really can't complain. It's a really good plugin, and as you can tell, it's free. So maybe go and try that. But yeah, that's actually everything for this track. It's a really simple but effective one. I think I've gone quite HEDEX on this one, which I'm glad I've managed to achieve. But yeah, I'll play this one out for you. Cheers, guys. Nice one. People in the